All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks again for bearing with us through some technical difficulties with Facebook Live. We are determined to get it all figured out by next Friday, so expect to see us on Facebook Live next Friday. We want to welcome you guys to our first Bird Friendly Friday. You are tuned in with education staff, myself, Emily Connor, and Michelle Wiegand today. We're really looking forward to this. And remember that you can tune in each week Friday at 2 p.m. to learn more about different tips and tricks for supporting bird life at home.
All right, so today's topic is on reducing window strikes at home. And we're also going to share a little bit about bird collisions in general, but also some DIY family-friendly activities that you can do to help make your windows more bird-friendly.
So in today's chat, we'll be exploring window collision data, talking more about what window collisions really are. We'll also talk briefly about spring migration in our region that's happening right now. And we will take an overview of the DIY family-friendly decals to help mitigate some of those window collisions.
All right, so we were really inspired to discuss this topic today by a couple different things. And one of those is all the window art that we are seeing in our own neighborhoods, but also around the world. As people are sheltered in place or following stay-at-home orders, we've seen a lot of creative ways that people are reaching out to neighbors and sending messages of hope, like these cutout hearts with messages of love, or when people are painting their windows and sending positive messages out. And of course, the bear hunt that probably everyone has seen, where you're putting out bears in windows for people to see, and people are going to look and find them in their neighborhood. And we loved this because it's such a inspiring, positive thing to do and interact with our community still, but it's also really helpful for birds. And we weren't sure if people knew that, so we wanted to share a little bit about that. It's a really important topic as we're entering spring migration.
All right, so let's take an overview of window collisions. Now, window strikes, this might be something you are familiar with, or perhaps you're not. Maybe you've never seen evidence of a window strike before. And believe it or not, a lot of window collisions do go unnoticed. So even if you've never noticed a window collision before, this is something that everybody has the power to avoid and to take a role in this kind of citizen science opportunity to make our yards more safe for birds. Unfortunately, window collisions are one of the leading causes of death in birds every single year. In fact, it's been estimated that around 100 million to 1 billion birds are dying annually to this problem. If we put that into more of a daily perspective, that's around 1 million window strikes every single day. Now, this is a problem because glass can't necessarily be seen by birds. Now, think about all the windows that we have in the St. Louis region. Just in my house, counting today, I counted around 15 windows. Now think about every single office, store, school, and home that we have in our area. The amount of windows we have is almost immeasurable. Now the biggest parts to windows are the clear windows and reflective windows. Now clear windows, these are an issue because they appear invisible to birds. They simply think that they can just fly through it because they don't see any structure in front of them. Another problem with this is having indoor plants on clear windowsills. Sometimes birds might want to fly over to these plants and they aren't able to recognize the window, kind of separating them from those plants. In addition to that, our reflective windows are a big issue too. They will typically reflect the outdoor habitat surrounding the window. And a lot of times that means bushes and trees and skies. And so birds will attempt to fly to that tree or that bush. Unfortunately, it's just a reflection in the window. And when birds mistake a window for an opening or reflection in their habitat, collisions can cause brain damage and death. All right, so on this slide, we have a few pictures for you, and you can see just the difference between a reflective window and one with a screen. So that window on the left is reflecting the blue sky, the clouds, a tree, rock, and grass. And so a bird might attempt to fly over to that tree. And so you can see how that can be really confusing to a bird. On the right, you have the same window covered by a screen. And this is a great example of a really easy way to mitigate some of those window collision problems. This screen does a really good job of breaking up that reflectiveness of the window and hopefully in turn reduces the chance of collisions. Now, if we look at the picture on the right, while I mentioned earlier that a lot of window collisions go undetected, this is a really good example of evidence left behind from a window collision. You can see that this bird had dust or dirt on him and unfortunately collided into this either clear or reflective window, and the impact left this bird print behind. These birds just can't see or interpret the windows, and this can be an effect of that. Now, luckily, there are lots of easy ways that we can keep this from happening today. All right, so let's take a look at where we are located and the types of birds that we receive in our area. This red star here shows us the St. Louis region and where the Audubon Center of Riverlands is. And you can see it's just right along the Mississippi River. Now, what's significant about this area is that we are within the Mississippi Flyway. Now, its corridors do stretch large across many states. And so this is a really large area for birds to migrate. Now, this Mississippi Flyway is very important because of the rivers that we have. You can see the major Mississippi River and all the others that run through it. Birds typically can use rivers as pathways along their migration, and so we see this heavily being used in the spring and fall. Specifically in the St. Louis area, we have a really special confluence. The Mississippi, Missouri, and Illinois River converge together in our area, and that makes it a really special place for birds to stop and rest as they're traveling along their migration. So there's lots of opportunities for resources like food and water in our area. Now, while our center is located where this nice red star is, the Mississippi Flyway is still very, very large. So whether you live in Fargo, North Dakota, Wichita, Kansas, or Tennessee, you are still a part of this Mississippi Flyway. So this map really shows the impact that you and your family can have just by taking a few bird-friendly initiatives at home. You can make a huge difference. Now, let's say you have a bird that unfortunately strikes your window. What should you do? Now, the first thing is to check the area around your window. Let's say you hear a large bang or you actually see a bird flying in. Check out the bird and see how they're doing. If the bird appears to be stunned, maybe it's not moving, but you can still tell it's breathing and standing. That's a good sign. It's important to remember that not all bird strikes are going to be fatal. And so if you do find a bird that's stunned but still breathing, what you can do is take that bird and place it in a large paper bag or box with a towel underneath it. Now, it's important to pick a bag or box that is closable so we don't have our bird flying away, but also has air flowing through it so that the bird has enough oxygen. Now, what you're going to want to do if you have, let's say like me, I have 2 large dogs running around, or maybe you have kids at home or a really busy house, you're going to want to find a cool, dark, quiet place to place this bird. So maybe in a room that isn't used often during the day, and you're going to want to leave him there for about an hour. So after an hour's up, you should check on your bird, and if they're alert and active, then it's a good idea to release them back into the wild in the area where you found them. Now, unfortunately, if the bird is not alert or active, you'll need to contact your wildlife rehabilitator. If you live in Missouri in the St. Louis region, you can call Wild Bird Rehabilitation Center, and we have their phone number and website on the page here. Now, if you live outside of the St. Louis region, outside of Missouri, you can contact the National Wildlife Rehabilitators Association. You can find their phone number and an address on here as well. All right, so we've talked about window collisions, and bird strikes. But how can we stop this from happening? What can we do to keep birds from colliding into our windows? And one of those ways that you can help is by installing different deterrent methods. Now, a deterrent, the purpose of it is to break up the reflectiveness or the clearness of a window. And this can be done in so many different ways. Some are super fun to do, and some that are easy and inexpensive that you could do at home right now as everyone's home with their families are things like window paint and window decals. Later on in our presentation, we're going to show you how to make some really fun DIY window decals at home with lots of fun pictures to follow. Now, there are some other methods that you can follow as well. These might require you to go to a store or order them online and might cost a little bit more money. But among those are things like feather-friendly window tape, also window blinds and screens like you saw on a previous photo, UV window tape. Bird feeder placement is another one to consider. Most people suggest that you have your feeders either 3 feet or closer to your windows or at least 30 feet away or farther. And then finally, we have our bird savers, which is rope hanging from windows. Now, here are a few photos of some examples that I mentioned. Right here is a bird-friendly deterrent, and so this is something that you can order and actually install yourself on your windows. And it doesn't obstruct as much of the view from your windows, which is nice, but you have these small dots that can help birds recognize the window is there. We also have those bird savers, which is the rope hanging down from our windows. This is another one you can do on your own, but you would have to purchase materials for that. And then we have our UV window tape. Now, research has shown that the most effective way to treat your windows is to maintain a 2-by-4 inch ratio. So if you take a look at those hanging ropes from that window, each rope is about 2 inches from the other. And the same for the UV tape. They're about 2 to 4 inches apart, which is a really good kind of ratio to stick to whenever you are treating your windows with deterrents.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about a DIY window decal activity that you can do at home. If you've been to our center before, you might recognize this picture. This picture is of a couple windows at our center where we actually were experiencing some bird strikes. So we invited the public to help us by creating window decals that they could color and stick on our windows. And then we also had some decals that they could take home with them as well. So I actually decided in the last couple of weeks to try this process at home. My family has really done a lot to try to increase habitat for birds and food sources by planting native plants and installing a water feature, and we feed birds. And it's a really special part of our family life. We love to watch them. We love to identify them. So we want to continue doing that, but we also want to make sure that we are making our windows as safe as we can for the birds that we're inviting into our yard. So step one of this DIY decal process was for us to print some stencils that we found online of birds that we commonly see in our backyard. So we printed stencils of goldfinch and house finches, cardinals, mockingbirds, barred owl, lots of different species. So once we had those printed out, we then colored them, painted them, and you can see here we used watercolor. We also used marker and crayon. And one thing we also did was we got our field guide out and we tried to observe what color the birds are, what type of field marks they have as we were doing these decals as well. And then I also just really encourage you to have fun with this activity and get a little messy while you're doing it. So step two, we cut and glued. So in the picture on the left, you can see after the paint dried and everything, we cut our stencils out of the paper. And then in the picture on the right, you can see we've glued them onto construction paper. And we did this just to add a pop of color and some additional texture for the birds to see as we are putting them up on our windows, and also just to make them a little bit more sturdy. The next thing we did was we cut some more. So this can be a little bit of a time-consuming process, and if you're like me and you've got a little one at home who maybe is not quite proficient at using scissors effectively, you might do what I did and, you know, put the little ones to bed, watch some Ozark, and do some more cutting, because there's a lot of it. So you can see here, once the decals were on the construction paper, I cut those out some more. And then we thought about weatherproofing. So we do really encourage you to put these decals on the outside of your window. If you put them on the inside and you've got really reflective windows like we do, the reflection's gonna win. And so we do really encourage you to put these decals on the outside of your windows. And so if you're doing that, you do need to consider weatherproofing them. So there's a few easy ways you can do that at home. You can use packing tape. If you have a laminator, you can do that, or you can use clear contact paper. So what I ended up doing was using some clear contact paper. I happen to have this from a previous project. I use the contact paper on both sides and then cut out the shapes of the decals. So you can see here, these have been cut out. If you use packing tape, that will work just as well. And then next is the fun part, you get to hang them. So we just use Scotch tape to hang these on our windows, but you could probably try like sticky tack. But if you're experiencing some cold weather in your area, that might not stick as well, but it certainly doesn't hurt to try. So you're gonna post them on the windows. If you do have a little one who's doing this, you might need to go in afterwards and try to rearrange them a little bit to make sure that you are, you know, staying within that 2 to 4 inch ratio that Emily talked about before. And then here's a photo of a partially completed window that we did. And as you can see behind, you know, in that reflection, these windows are very reflective, but the decals do start to help break up that image. So some other ideas that you can do is to use recycled magazines and cut out your favorite pictures or images or words. These are some that we made out of recycled Audubon magazines, of course. We also just cut out some, you know, shapes that sort of looked like birds and other wildlife, and we painted those. So that's what some of those look like. And then another thing we did, and I encourage you to do, is to take it one step further and have that conversation with your neighbors. Why are you doing this? What does it mean? What are those bird decals doing in your windows? So put a sign together for either your window, if you've got a window that's close to the sidewalk, or we just put it on a stake near our sidewalk so people walking by could read about it and see what we did. So you can see that printed in front of our house there. And then there's a nice color copy. We have put this document on our website, so if you would like to print this and put one in front of your house, you're welcome to do that. The website link is right here on this screen, and you can just go to our website and click on Virtual Bird Friendly Fridays under the Education tab. So we're really glad that you all joined us today. And as you can see, there's really no one size fits all solution. But you're all here because you care about birds, and that's fantastic. So we really encourage you to get creative and do what you can to make a difference for birds one window at a time. So thank you guys for joining us for our first virtual Bird Friendly Friday. Just a reminder that we do have another one coming up on Friday, April 17th at 2 p.m. Central Time on Facebook Live. We'll be joined by Mitch Leachman from St. Louis Audubon Society, and he's going to talk to us about building a backyard bird sanctuary at home. So thank you guys again so much for joining us. We hope to see you all out at the Audubon Center at Riverlands again soon. But until then, the sanctuary is open. So we do encourage you to get out to Riverlands Migratory Bird Sanctuary, enjoy the beauty and the power of nature, and make sure you stay safe and at a appropriate social distance when you're there. Thank you guys so much.